It is Friday, August 19th. You're listening to the College Football Daily. I'm your host, Lance Glinn. Before we start, I just want to remind everyone to like and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel and make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the College Football Daily wherever you get your podcast. So yesterday morning, the Big Ten announced their new media rights agreement, partnering with CBS, Fox, NBC, and NBC Universal's Peacock. The deal was huge. Every school, including USC and UCLA, when they join in a few seasons, will make a ton of money. And joining me to get into the nuts and bolts of it is 24/7 Sports college football writer Brandon Marcello. Marcello, thanks so much for coming on. And I guess first and foremost, I'd love to just hear what your initial reaction was to this mega deal for the Big Ten Conference.
Yeah, we knew this was coming for the last several weeks. We started hearing numbers being floated around there. It looks like the payout's going to be about $1.2 billion. That deal, of course, backloaded on the back end of this 7-year deal quite a bit. One, because you got two schools joining the conference here in a couple of years, USC and UCLA. But also that's how most media rights deals are. As you go along, you start paying out a little bit more there on the back end. And the big thing here is that the earning potential for these Big Ten teams, say in year 5 of this deal, in relation to maybe year 1. Because year 1, the payout's not going to increase all that much. But man, goodness gracious, you get to year 6 and everything. We're talking about, when all things considered, each school being paid potentially more than $100 million a year.
Yeah, the amount of money is just, it's absurd. And the Big Ten, I think, hit a home run with this deal. So I think one of the biggest shockers of it, just by reading the initial reactions, is the rotating Big Ten championship game between CBS, Fox, and NBC. Fox getting it 4 times, CBS twice, and NBC getting it once in 2026. How surprised were you that the 3 networks were able to agree to this and that the Big Ten spread them out instead of just giving them all to Fox, for example?
I think it shows, one, the power of the Big Ten, the negotiations table. Also, it shows that Kevin Warren, the commissioner there, his NFL background, he's taken that approach with the media rights discussions. He wants to spread this out like the NFL does. And in that matter, you rotate, like the Super Bowl, you rotate your Big Ten championship game in football. It's a very smart maneuver. And also, you're giving it out to these networks based off of how much they're paying you. And then you have a rotation of some sort. You don't necessarily have someone getting first chance, first look at. That's why Fox, for example, is going to have it 4 of those 7 years. NBC is only going to have it once, and CBS is going to have it twice. NBC and CBS's deals, very similar as far as payout, what they're paying the Big Ten, but you have to consider CBS at most is going to have 15 games a year. Meanwhile, NBC/Peacock, they're going to have 15 or so games a year, plus an additional 8 that's only streaming on Peacock. So in some ways, they try to figure out a way to balance this all out. But because the Big Ten does not have to deal with ESPN, and they're dealing with 3 networks with smaller time frames and slots, they're able to kind of produce something that's more almost like orange juice from concentrate. It's not some type of like drink mix. This is actual real orange juice. It's really good, and we're going to spread this stuff out and figure out a way to everybody get their really good shot of orange juice, so to speak, of the Big Ten that fits their prime time or daytime schedule.
And, just real quick, we obviously mentioned the various channels that this is going to be on. And, of course, one of those is CBS. How funny is it going to be when you see a Big Ten on CBS as opposed to SEC on CBS like we're so used to seeing?
It's so strange. In fact, CBS tweeted out a video of what that might actually look like with the SEC on CBS theme music, which we just kind of assumed that's always been the SEC on CBS theme music, but it was actually, I think, used previously for a Super Bowl that the CBS did years ago, and we just kind of associate it now with the SEC. But now we're going to associate it with Big Ten. In fact, you guys watch CBS Sports Network like I do as a proud Paramount employee. They play that music before every college football game, whether it's Mountain West or Conference USA. So get used to it. It's sticking around for the Big Ten on CBS.
Absolutely. And so I want to, as we mentioned before, with USC and UCLA joining in a few seasons, I wanted to kind of ask about the impact that they made and whether it affected the timeline, the overall dollar amount maybe, or really anything else. How do you think the announcement of USC and UCLA to the Big Ten impacted what this deal looks like now in mid-August compared to what it would have looked like before they announced it in early June.
I think if you guys remember, I think in May, Kevin Warren said we might have something in place, our TV rights agreement here the next month or so. And then, of course, in that time frame is when the USC, UCLA stuff started to come together. Obviously, they were able to kind of go back, not necessarily to the negotiating table, but go, okay, so what else could we add to this? How do we restructure these deals, send this back out to market with these two variables in there? And I think to me, simply put, you look at the deal like this. It was going to be about a $1 billion over 7 years. Those two schools joined, and now reportedly it's about $1.2 billion. So those two schools, because of that LA market, which is so lucrative, provided them, I think, an extra boost of about $200 million per year, which is substantial. Because what you're saying, in an indirect sense, is that USC and UCLA are worth $100 million a piece for this television deal on average, because not necessarily because of their name brand value, which is huge, but because they're getting into and cornering the LA market. No one else is going to have a team there than those two, and they're going to be in the Big Ten. I think that was substantial for negotiations. And of course, we'll talk about this soon, I'm sure, what the conference might look like if they decide to expand further, because as the Action Network reported about this, there are escalator clauses in there if they should expand again.
Well, yeah, and that brings me to my next question. We talked about cornering, obviously, LA and what that did for the Big Ten's deal. And of course, realignment is still on everyone's mind, right? And then the questions come of what's next or even who's next. Obviously, that's still being asked to this day. How do you think this deal affects that aspect of college athletics? Because obviously, rumors haven't stopped swirling surrounding schools, whether they're in the Pac-12 or a potentially school like Notre Dame.
You know, listen, Kevin Warren told me back at Big Ten Media Days in late July, we're doing our homework on teams. We're not necessarily targeting anybody, but we're doing our homework. So they're not actively recruiting anybody. In fact, they don't really have to, because I think they know what schools they can just go pick up if they want to. And those schools, obviously, that make sense right now are in the Pac-12, Oregon, Washington, Cal, and Stanford. Will that happen? We'll see. I think we're going to see a period of time here over the next 3 to 4 months that's going to kind of quiet down, because all the teams that are remaining in the Pac-12 right now, or the Pac-10 if you want to call it that, 'cause they're 10 teams once again, they're going to sit back, wait to see how the Pac-12 does with their media rights negotiations, because now that the Big Ten's out of the way, the Pac-12 has free open range to talk to ESPN, their other media partners, to figure out what their deal is going to look like here in the future. And so if they're able to provide something to these 4 schools who are apparently potentially could be Big Ten targets in the future, and say, hey, listen, you're going to make this or that, this will maybe ease your concerns a little bit. Don't be so quick to try and jump to judgment here. But the Pac-12, these are the most critical months in the Pac-12's history. If they can't get this figured out and ease those concerns, those schools will start on an official, unofficial basis trying to get in the Big Ten, and then the Big Ten will have to make some decisions as well. And my belief is that if those schools want out and they're able to partner up with each other and they want to go to the Big Ten will take them.
And so we talk about the Pac-12, we talk about, and we just bring other conferences and teams into it as well. And let's take a look now about how this just affects the college football world as a whole. And we know that with the new SEC media rights deal, the likelihood is the payout per team will be similar to what the Big Ten just announced. But how much does this deal and what the SEC is ultimately going to do, how much does it separate these two conferences from the rest of the pack and get them really ahead of the other 3 current Power 5 conferences?
Yeah, no one else is really close to the SEC and Big Ten. And then the Big Ten is going to make, at least on paper as we stand right now, the Big Ten is going to make a little bit more than the SEC on average year to year to year to year because of this huge, gigantic deal. And that's a big thing to kind of point out. But behind the SEC and the Big Ten, there's a much wider gap. We're talking like $30 to $40 million on average per year, per team, per payout. That is substantial. And that provides us a picture here of, we're so used to talking about the Power 5 conferences, the 5 big players in the conference races, those being the teams that are always going to be getting similar payouts and be on equal footing competitively when it comes to recruiting, spending, facilities. That's not going to be the case anymore. When we're sitting here 5 to 10 years from now, there's going to be haves, the maybe haves, and then the complete have-nots, and we have no shot of even being in that group. And because of this wider gap, it's going to be Big Ten, SEC, and then everybody else. Everybody's going to be fighting to be the 3rd best conference. No one is going to be able to fight to be part of the big boys. Right now, there's 5 big boys, but now it's 2, and I don't think anybody has any shot in being a big boy among the SEC and the Big Ten. Everybody's fighting for scraps as that third big dog.
And, we obviously talked when USC and UCLA, it was announced that they were making the move to the Big Ten. And you mentioned it then, as you did now, it's really a Power 2 as opposed to a Power 5. And it's shown with the amount of money that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to get. But you mentioned something interesting, and that's the fact that the Big Ten's deal may be a little more per team per year than the SEC. And I guess just with that being said, and with the fact that USC and UCLA are coming over to the Big Ten, grade Kevin Warren's summer. I mean, this was, I think, just a unbelievable summer, especially with a lot of the heat he got in years past coming over as the new commissioner.
Yeah, 2 years ago, he canceled football.
Yeah.
And he was just an absolute enemy of the state in the Midwest, and for that matter, college football in general. You had his own players in his own conference petitioning, threatening to sue, coming together saying, we want to play. And then, of course, he changed his mind after so much pressure. 2 years later, he's seen as potentially the king, if not maybe the strongest voice in the room when it comes to college athletics. Just a few months ago, it was Greg Sankey, but now he's expanded his conference. He has the largest media deals, and he's done so in a way that was very well planned. He brought a lot of really great people around him to figure this out, and he's kind of taken this NFL model, this business model. Not a lot of college football fans, traditionalists, are going to like that, but what he's done is, I'm not going to just go partner with ESPN like some other conferences. We're going to put our product in front of as many eyes and in diverse areas as possible. Let's go to the big 3 networks, go and do that, do some streaming on the side. We don't need ESPN. They might be sports. They might be someone that we are so accustomed to seeing is controlling the narrative with everything day to day. But when it comes to just simply getting more eyes on our product, we want to be broadcasting in IMAX, so to speak, rather than just handing out iPads to everybody and saying, watch our stuff.
So, Brandon, I'll get you out of here on this one. And I want to move away from football now, just looking at Big Ten athletics as a whole. And, of course, look, football is the main driving factor in this. And we can't forget that. It's the moneymaker sport for really every school, not only in the Big Ten, but in the country, except, a couple here and there. But how does this deal affect, say, men's and women's basketball in the Big Ten, as well as the Olympic sports in the conference as well?
Yeah, this, again, it takes like ESPN out of the puzzle, so to speak, where we can see men's and women's basketball, and it's primarily going to be CBS and Fox, and for that matter, the Big Ten Network. Big Ten Network's going to be broadcasting something like 50-plus basketball games. And when you look at the Olympic sports, an interesting part of this deal is that NBC, which has ownership of the Golf Network, they're interested in showing and having rights package where they're going to be able to broadcast golf on the Golf Channel and partner that up with some things with that and Peacock. And Peacock, I think, is really the big winner in all of this because of NBC. They're going to put so much stuff on streaming there where they're going to be able to package it to sports fans of, hey, everybody out there maybe wants to see Notre Dame join the Big Ten. Well, Notre Dame's already joined Peacock, and we also have the Big Ten. So come check us out. We're going to have football programming all day during the season, basketball as well during the spring and everything. So big winner here, I think, really is Peacock and the streaming wars, so to speak, when it comes to actual live sports content. Because reportedly, other streaming giants out there, including Amazon, were offering more money to be part of all this, and the Big Ten kind of turned that down because they were going for more traditional partners, stronger partners in the marketplace that they have good relationships with. And of course, having a primary network over the air, so to speak, like NBC, helps in that department.
Yeah, well, get your streaming services ready. I already have Peacock myself, so I know whenever my Scarlet Knights are up there on Peacock or whatever channel, I'll be good to go for sure.
I only got Peacock for like a month once so I could watch MacGruber.
Well, look, a lot of us are going to have to be getting, whether it's Peacock or any other streaming service with the way these things are going now. You can follow Brandon on Twitter at @bmarcello. Brandon, really appreciate you coming on today. Thanks so much for giving me some time. Remember to like and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel and give the College Football Daily a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. For Brandon Marcello, I am Lance Glynn. Thanks for listening to the College Football Daily and have a good weekend.